Appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
Hey everybody. Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Okay, so trying a little bit different setup on this. I hope it comes through okay. Looks like my background might get a little lost up there. Those of you who've seen it already know what it is, but today I figured we'd talk about something besides the same old stuff going on in the news. Let's talk about our favorite books and movies. It's been a while since I've read a book recently, but probably my favorite books from childhood. One of them was called Magic Kingdom for Sale, sold by Terry Brooks, and that probably was one of the most influential books I read. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It has it was a really good book. If you know about it, let me know. Another series that I really liked that I read, especially in early high school, was and I know now he's Scientology and all that stuff, but at the time, L. Ron Hubbard, and it was called the Mission Earth series. It was a decology, which means 10 books, and they were each probably about that thick. They were huge hardcover books at the time, massive, hundreds of pages long. There was, I felt, a lot of really good backstory and really good fantasy that went into it. It was a good book. Favorite movies recently, I like Marvel movies. Probably the best. It's been a little bit since I've had a chance to really sit down and watch a movie though. My favorite movies as a kid were Star Wars. I loved Star Wars. I can't help it. I'm a Star Wars nerd. Other things that I watched were generally superhero based. I liked a lot of the shows and movies that came out. Some of the ones that have come out recently, I feel focus less on what the movie is about and more about trying to be socially, I guess, interesting. Movies, that's probably about it. One of the things that I used to spend a lot of my time doing, haven't really that much, except for I play with my kids, but is gaming, and Fallout 4 was a big one. My middle son likes Terraria. If anybody's familiar with that, he has this whole huge world set up for Terraria, and it's along with Borderlands is probably one of his favorite games. For some reason, this video quality doesn't seem as high as the last one I did. I don't know why that is. I'm gonna try to see if I can get it a little better. In the meantime, I don't know why it's doing it like this. Anyway, I'm trying the new Facebook setup. I'm thinking maybe I should have left it alone. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is how you're passing the time. Let me know in the comments on the video when you get a chance to watch it. I'm gonna keep it not too ridiculously long tonight. I know the first couple that I did were over an hour long, and who wants to listen to me ramble that long, right? Uh, if you are in a series or movies that you really like lately, your whatever books you're reading, Donovan, my middle son, he like I said, he's playing Terraria, he's playing Borderlands. Uh, Two though, he's got a lot more progress on Borderlands 2. He has Borderlands 3. He likes Borderlands 2 better. I personally like 3 better, so we will play Borderlands 2. I'll play with him, but when I do get a chance to play myself, I tend to play 3 instead, just because I like the travel, the fast travel to anywhere on Borderlands 3. Moving on from video games. Speaking of video games, though, before we move on, I have my video guy Manuel. He's working on something that I think is going to be really fun to laugh at. I don't want to give too much away. I think it's going to be really amusing though if he gets a chance to do it. I'm not trying to put any pressure on him or anything. I just think it'll be entertaining. Uh, so how has life changed for you? Obviously, with the campaign thing, a lot of things have changed. Knocking on doors is not really the best option at this point, even though I'd like to. I'd like to get out there and meet all of you face to face, knock on your door, introduce myself, tell you who I am and what I'm about. But obviously, that's a really bad idea. All the debates, all the forums have been canceled. So I have to figure out something else. One of the ways I'm doing that is I'm going to do this every night at 7 p.m., even if you guys have other things to do. Maybe you can watch it later. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear what you're concerned about. What's on your mind? I can sit here all day and tell you what I think and what my views are, and I will. I'll be introducing videos dedicated to certain subjects coming up. I'll be outlining my platforms, outlining my beliefs, but I'd also like to hear from you as first district voters. What's most important to you? I don't want to focus exclusively on politics. I think we get enough of that from the news right now. I'm more than happy to share what my views are and what my stance is on certain things. But every time you turn it on now, that's all that's on there is stuff to do with what's going on right now, the quarantine, for lack of a better word, the politicians involved in these decisions, and help for us if that's going to happen. There's a lot of partisanship going on. I could talk for hours about that, but let's focus on other things for a few minutes at least. My my wife works from home primarily anyway, but now that the kids are home from school, it's been interesting on a day-to-day basis watching her interact with the kids and have to change her schedules a little bit. And I know, God forbid, your kids are home, right? Personally, I like it. I'm glad they're home. They get the e-learning done, and I get a chance to spend some time with them more than I normally would. Hang out with them. Like I said, we play some video games, chat, talk about what's going on. It's there are a lot of negatives to excuse me, I'm gonna have to touch my face. My eye itches. I just washed my hands off, so I'll be all right. We There are a lot of negatives to what's going on right now, but one of the positives I think is people get an opportunity to spend more time with their family. For those that are able, I'm able, so I'm thankful for that. I would have been very, very limited in the amount of time I was able to spend with my family before this. I had every intention of pretty much being gone every day, knocking on doors, introducing myself to the voters, meeting people. That obviously has changed a great deal, uh, but as such, it I think has made me a better dad, uh, which is more important to me than any political office in the land. I get more time to talk to my kids, to find out how their day is going, to find out what's on their mind. And I urge those of you to do the same that have the opportunity. I know that a lot of times life kind of gets in the way with our schedules and hectic day to day life. But hopefully you'll get a chance to spend more time with those you care about. It's a scary time for, especially for those that are in the medical field. Those are on the front lines in our hospitals and EMTs and firefighters. A lot of people that most people don't normally think about are worried, and my heart goes out to them and their families. They certainly don't have any time off. But for especially non-essential businesses where work hours have been scaled back, for those kids that are home instead of being in school, take the time to spend more time with those you love. Um, I'm going to try to do this on a daily basis and vary the subjects a little bit. Let's make it interesting. Not always about politics, not always about policy. Let's talk about what's on your mind too. Uh, I know that finances are on the mind of a lot of Americans right now, such as how am I going to pay my bills if I'm not able to go to work? Um, there are a lot of things shut down right now. A lot of businesses that even the ones that aren't completely shut down are definitely seeing a significant downturn in how their business is doing. And I've tried to do what I can to share information about like small business loans that are out there and like the 211 program, 211.org, things like that. I will continue to do that. Let me turn this off. I forgot I didn't silence my phone. I think that I like I said, I try to share the information that I can for that stuff. If it helps even one person, then I'm happy with that. I don't. You may get more information about the virus and the spread from other people. I try to keep us informed on that, but there's plenty of that information out there. I don't feel like you need to see it every time you turn on your Facebook feed or your Twitter or whatever. Uh, if you want to look that information up, trust me, there's no shortage of that. If anyone has anything that they would really like to talk about, that they'd really like to hear my position on, or just have a discussion, let me know. I am very flexible in what these are going to be about. I have some good ideas for some stuff coming up that I think will be entertaining, as well as informative. One thing that I'm going to talk about today is I moved up here to Michigan City, Indiana at about 10 years old. We moved up to live with my grandparents at the time, who they lived in Trail Creek and did for about 30 years. I attended the schools here. One thing that struck me when I first got up here, first of all, I took a lot of heat for my accent. I had a very strong accent when I first moved up here. I don't anymore, obviously. But at the time, it took a while of actively trying to suppress it and fight it. But I was finally able to get rid of it. Now, one thing that my wife does remark is we went down to Houma, which is the town in Louisiana that I was born, city more. It's actually 60 miles south of New Orleans. For those of you who don't think there's anything south of New Orleans, there is. It's southwest of New Orleans, but there is still plenty of things directly south of New Orleans. But when we went down there to visit, it didn't take very long of me being around my family and other people for me to start to pick up the accent again. And my wife was like, "Okay, you got to stop. That's not gonna happen. Nah." So if exposed to it, it tends to come right back and be like, "Oh, hey, remember me?" Uh, that said, one thing that I was struck by when I moved up here was the very big difference in the way that various things were taught. And I'm not talking about math, mainly history. One thing that was covered far more extensively in school in Louisiana, especially the same grade, third grade, fourth grade, when I came up here, is that the Revolutionary War, for example, was covered in great detail in Louisiana. And I lived in Alabama, by the way, for a short time before we came up here. Louisiana, Alabama, and then up to Indiana. But the South, at least at the time, taught far more extensively about the rights and the reasons. Now, I will say that the schools up here tended to concentrate more on the numbers and the battles and things like that, whereas we spent I would say far more time on the reasoning behind it and what led to this and what led to that. Just a little perspective. Another thing is, so I think one good thing to talk about is Indiana State Prison and prison privatization. I'm going to give you my perspective on that and why I believe that so many of those in favor of privatization are. I am not in favor of prison privatization, and I'll explain why. I believe that people who are in favor of prison privatization, I think they just look at the numbers. They look at the numbers and they say, "Wow, we can save a lot of money." It's the same thing. Either way, people are still, watching the offenders, inmates, whatever you want to call them. The most recent term was offender, so we're going to use that. People are still watching the offenders. They're still taking care of them. It's simply a holding facility. So that's all that matters, right? Is these people being held in a secure environment until they're able to be released once they've served their sentence. Well, yes and no. There are a few things that I believe is critical to keep in mind when we're talking about a prison system. Number one, what's the reason? What's the reason that these people have been incarcerated? First of all, they've broken the law in some way, shape, or form, and there have been punishment for that. So what are we doing with them? Now, in our current system, we tend to lock them away until they've served their sentence and then open doors and release them. Now, there are programs in some locations, Indiana State Prison is one of them, where people are able to get a college degree, take college courses, things like that. That's great. I'm actually in favor of that to a degree. However, one thing that I do have a problem with is there doesn't seem to be enough oversight. I think that we need to focus on those people that are actually willing and able to improve their lot in life, that have the desire to change the way that they're going and work towards doing better. One of those ways is by giving the opportunity to earn college degrees, yes, but we also need to focus a lot more on re-entry programs. First of all, why are these people committing crimes in the first place? The number one reason is usually poverty. People don't know what they can do or should do in order to pull themselves up out of poverty. Many of these people come from inner cities. They come from places that are generally have less jobs available than maybe slightly less populated areas. There are generally a lot more jobs available, even crappy jobs, a lot more jobs available in places like uh, Michigan City, for example, than say Hammond, because Hammond has a lot more people. Uh, People say, well, it's got a lot more businesses too, and yeah, but one critical difference between Michigan City and Hammond is Michigan City is actually a very service industry oriented city. Uh, we have a lot of people who come here from Chicago, between here and South Bend. Sorry, another itch. And I'm not quite bald. It's obviously I have a little hair. uh, another key factor in the prison system is how were people brought up? What, and I'm not just talking about at home. I'm talking about in their school, in their environment, everything. It all contributes together. And when you have people that the only way they know how to make money is via a criminal lifestyle, and I use criminal loosely. I'm not talking about hardened criminals where uh, shooting people and robbing people. I'm talking about maybe shoplifting or whatever. It all contributes to the same thing, and it's all just someone's attempt to pay their bills, to get some money. And I'm not trying to excuse criminal behavior. I'm not at all. What I'm trying to do is make us understand that many people have different motivations for the crimes that they do and the reasons that they do them. What we need to do is focus on those people that maybe don't want to commit crimes, but it's the only way that they know how to pay their bills. Let's focus on them. Let's teach them critical life skills, things like how to pay how not only how to pay your bills, but how to pay rent, how to get a mortgage, how to apply for a job, how to manage your credit, how to do all these things. And these are all critical life skills that are neglected at base level schooling, K through 12. I When I went to school, and from my understanding, it isn't any better now. General taking care of your finances, did general responsibility, that's not taught in school. That should be taught at home. And a lot of people who end up committing crimes don't have the best home life. And it's not an excuse. You know, it's not a generalization. It's a statistic. So how can we fix it? Well, one thing is back to the privatization. So in Indiana, for example, I can only speak from my own experiences and the research that I've done. In Indiana, prior to privatization of the food system there and the healthcare system there were a lot less incidents um, involving the PDR, the prisoner's dining room. The food that Aramark serves there is not quality. As a matter of fact, my wife took our oldest son, took him there in a tour, and none of the rest of it bothered him that much. You had those offenders who would play along that were like, come here, boy, in order to instill a little fear, kind of the scared straight type of thing. None of that really bothered him. He was okay with all of that. But when we got to the cafeteria and he saw what he would have to eat if he went to prison, he was like straight and narrow. He was like, I want no part of that. We still talk about it and laugh about it. And the funny thing is now I think he was like maybe 6 at the time. The thing is now he doesn't remember actually what was like on the tray. He doesn't remember, exactly what it is. He just remembers that it was horrific. So he's been, I mean, ultimately it worked. It did work like a scared straight, just very different than what we thought. It was interesting. Uh, but back to privatization. The other big issue with it is, for example, the CERT squad, the emergency team that gets sent to the prisons in order to help quell riots and things like that. When they went down to, I believe it was Newcastle, the one of the areas that are run by a private firm versus Indiana Department of Corrections, the place there actually changed their radio codes so that the CERT team didn't know what they were saying on the radio. They had no way of knowing what was happening around the prison. They did that on purpose. Uh, Unfortunately, this left CERT team in a position where they were like, we just had to wait until they, got on the radio and said, help, 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 because we didn't understand any of their radio codes. We weren't briefed. We weren't told any of this stuff. And the officers who work there are paid less, significantly less, by the way, than correctional officers, which correctional officers are underpaid quite a bit, for those of you who aren't aware. I know that at the time that I worked there, we weren't paid that well. I think now it might be, I'd have to look it up. I want to say about $16 an hour, which in an environment where you're working around convicted rapists, murderers, the people who have committed the most egregious of society, who have violated the most serious laws. I don't think that that's enough money, not even close. At one point, we had exceptional health insurance. Now, luckily, once they changed it, once we adjusted to it, I believe that deductible security, which is what they use now, I think that that's actually pretty good. That in conjunction with price tag transparency it has the potential to transform this country's healthcare system, but that's not what this video is about. Correctional officers are, in my opinion, very underappreciated. They are the redheaded stepchild of law enforcement. They are still technically law enforcement, but they don't get any of the benefits of law enforcement. There's generally very little to no respect for them from the law enforcement community. There are many downsides to being a correctional officer. There are some good sides. Now, once they played with the rules at the prison and changed it to where you were law enforcement, then you were a public servant, and then you were this. Basically, what they did was they made it to where you wouldn't get overtime during the normal shift that you carried out. Now, prior to that, you would get 8 hours of overtime, and that was responsible for the bulk of your check. You had your short week and your long week. You would work 2 on, 2 off, and then every other weekend. So 2, 3, 2, 3, etc. You can kind of work it out. So basically, you'd be off every other weekend, which was pretty sweet. I didn't mind that. I liked that portion of the job. You know what? While I'm on that subject, I'm going to talk about how different things have gotten there. At the time that I worked there, one of the best things about working there to me, and my wife agrees, was when you come in, the outside world is locked out. You couldn't get any phone call. Emergencies are different, but you couldn't get any phone calls from harassments, annoying people, any of that, bill collectors, whatever. You couldn't just call the prison and get through and talk to an officer. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have any of that. All of that stuff had to be left in your car. Well, they are so short-staffed that there is a pilot program in Indiana State Prison. Now, this has been a year or so since I heard about it and actually verified that it existed. But they're actually starting to allow people because they can't get staff. They're so shorthanded that they actually started a pilot program where because they had so many people coming in for an interview. Back up a little bit. They had so many people coming in for an interview that once they found out they had to leave their cell phone in the car and couldn't use it, couldn't check social media, they would actually walk out of the interview not interested. Didn't matter what the pay was. It didn't matter any of that. They would walk out of the interview and say, no, thank you. Now, because they were so shorthanded, they introduced a pilot program where, to the best of my understanding, the phones are kept in a lockbox, and X amount of time. That part is varied. I've been told different times, but they're allowed at least once during their shift to go and check their phone, check their social media. They get like half an hour. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Now, there are also reports that they're able to carry it with them and keep it with them. I don't know. I don't think that I would want to take that chance because one of the biggest threats at Indiana State Prison and just jails in general are cell phones. And you wouldn't think so, but one of the problems is it isn't even the camera portion of it, because you may hear about videos of inmates filming stuff and doing this and doing that. The problem is the phone calls on the prison system phones are monitored, right? So they're always recorded. They can pull them up and they can go back and say, hey, what did this person say, right, or do? With a cell phone, that's not a possibility. None of the communications are monitored. They can actually set up hits and have. They can tell people, hey, I'm going to court tomorrow, come get me at this time. They can have people follow and harass officers. There's a whole host of things that can be done with a cell phone from behind bars. When I first started, I was like, but prison phones and all that stuff, commissary, all that stuff is vastly overpriced. So what's the problem? And once I thought about it for a minute, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes more sense. The first initial reaction for me even was, what's the big deal? It's just a phone. Well, it goes far deeper than that. But I hope you have enjoyed this time as much as I have. And I'm going to start, like I said, I'm going to start doing this every night, 7 p.m. I'm going to start posting the different subjects that we're going to cover, but I'm going to try to keep the vast majority of them a lot more lighthearted and a lot more interesting than just the normal stuff you're going to see on social media. Oh no, we're all so miserable. The economy's tanking, this, that, and the other. Let's be more positive. I'm going to try to be more positive. So I look forward to talking to you all again and seeing you, and hopefully you can give me some good ideas of what you'd like to hear. So, again, thank you for joining me. God bless you, and God bless the USA.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2020. Dion's Daily Dose. All rights reserved.